a lot of these champions and challengers are going to be ready. And if you are trying to blow it the F out on this once-in-a-lifetime card, I feel like the way to do that is to have more than 3 title fights, and that's my expectation.
Welcome back to Against the Cage. Scott Fontana here in studio with UFC's lead play-by-play announcer, Jon Anik, as the promotion is about to enter a new era on Paramount Plus, coming up with UFC 324 and 325 starting next weekend. Jon, we have actually a little bit of news that kind of broke today, right? We've got the broadcast team has been assembled. We know who it is. You've known for a little while, I'm sure, but the big one who is new for UFC fans, Kate Scott. When you heard that she was going to be involved, what was your reaction?
Thrilled. I found out just a couple of hours ago, so I found out when a lot of the MMA masses found out. I met her one time. I've been talking a lot about just her ability organically to just own that desk. And I do think that to be reactionary, to be a good listener, and to just be a naturally gifted broadcaster are hugely important. And she's got all of those boxes checked. So it's a big addition to our broadcast team. And I still don't have a TV format yet in terms of what other additions or bells and whistles might be added to the telecast. But we're going to put our best foot forward January 24th of that, I can assure you.
When do you usually find stuff like that out? I mean, obviously, that usually is like, oh, when we change our broadcast partner, but...
So I would normally have a TV format by this point in time, but I think because we have a new television partner, maybe they're getting everything into a more perfect format before they send it my way. But I don't know how the show's going to begin. I don't know if UFC fans can expect wholesale changes. You have seen some revelations in terms of the broadcast team, but I got to think in terms of this first show in particular. I know we're doing 2 shows back to back, but there's going to be some enhanced component or pageantry of some kind. So we'll see.
And obviously, the big thing for UFC fans is this is the end of the pay-per-view era as we know, at least in the United States.
Right.
Did you ever think we'd see the day?
It's a great question, and I haven't gotten that question all day. No, right? I, in my formative years as a combat sports fan, was wondering how I was going to watch the boxing match that weekend or watch the MMA fight that weekend and get a group together, and maybe I can invite myself over to this buddy's place. So the fact that this is no longer price prohibitive for so many mixed martial arts fans, especially the young fans, I think it's absolutely enormous. And I think for a lot of people who already had subscriptions to Paramount Plus, they don't know what they're in for.
Now, obviously, this is it's kind of the end of what we call pay-per-views, right? They're numbered events or premium numbered events, whatever. I don't know if we've settled on a nomenclature there.
Numbered events is what we're
numbered events is where we're starting. Okay, okay. The fans eventually will probably take over, right? They as they tend to do. They'll come up with their own name, maybe. Yeah. But as far as kind of now we're starting here, we have a big gap from the last time you guys were in action. It's like 6 weeks or something like that. I think this is even longer than we normally get when we have that that holiday break here. But I'm curious about from like your perspective and maybe what you know of like the production team and that kind of thing. When you get this like 4 or 5, in this case, about 6 weeks off, how key is that for you guys to kind of reset yourselves and get ready for the very long year?
It has felt really good to have a chance to sort of decompress a little bit, but in part I don't know because this has not been my reality. I haven't had anything resembling this type of break in 15 years, so I think it's good. As experienced as we are as broadcasters, when you take 6 or 8 weeks away, I do think that you need to find your footing again, but it's exciting. You know, it's crazy to think about the last 15 years and how quickly it's gone by. I'm entering my 16th year with the company, from Fox to ESPN and now to CBS and Paramount Plus. It's been a wild ride, but I really think that as exciting as the ESPN deal was and to see the fan base explode during COVID, I really do believe that for a lot of people, $79.99 was a real turnoff, and they're going to be able to watch what we believe is the greatest sport in the world. And
sure.
It's going to be reasonably priced.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And obviously, let's talk about 324 here. Coming up next week, it's the big one. It's the big start here. But we do have to talk about the elephant in the room. The loss of the Kayla Harrison fight against Amanda Nunes, what Dana was calling the biggest women's MMA fight or greatest women's MMA fight in history. A lot of people were looking to that as even like the most anticipated fight on that card, stacked as it is. What was your reaction when you heard kind of the word got out that, yes, she's not going to be there, Kayla Harrison has surgery?
Absolutely gutted for Kayla, who has already undergone neck surgery as we're sitting here taping, and just so many questions. When did it happen? When did they make the decision to have surgery? How long has she been dealing with this? How long is the recovery? Are they going to hold out Amanda Nunes? And you can certainly classify that fight as the biggest women's fight on paper in MMA history, but if you look at 2026, that's as big a fight as we can put together in the men's or women's game. So to be able to offer up that fight on the first Paramount Plus show would have been absolutely enormous. Promotionally, do they try to hold that fight together? I think they do, but if I'm Amanda Nunes, I'm trying to fight Norma Dumont or fight somebody here in short order and not have this training camp be for naught. But Kayla Harrison is one of the best human beings that I have ever been around. I have so much respect for her as a woman and as a mother, and the way she has saved her family and adopted her niece and nephew, and to see her crying on Instagram this morning out the other side of neck surgery was really difficult. So I'm glad you acknowledged the elephant in the room, because as excited as we are about 324, we're thinking about Kayla for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely, and obviously we don't know the situation with that fight, or with Amanda in that whole situation as well, but we're talking about at least probably a 6-month recovery kind of period. That's what we're starting to hear, right? And you would think, especially because of the weight cut involved with these women, particularly with Kayla, it's going to be hard for her to get in the cage anywhere in this first half of the year. Probably even throws White House off the table, right?
And that's, I think, really where the devastation lies for Kayla, is when she thinks about what this year was to hold for her, finally getting the Amanda Nunes fight, and then, yes, as a 2-time Olympic judo gold medalist who represented the United States of America, to be able to walk from the Oval Office to the White House lawn with the stars and stripes behind her. I think she's in process mode, processing everything, and her mom taking care of her kids in Florida. She's under the knife in New York City, and it's a neck, right? Whether it's an eye or a neck or a back, there's no guarantee with certain surgeries that you ever come back, and what form do you come back in. So it's going to be a tough 72-plus hours for Kayla Harrison, but she's as mentally forged as any athlete I know, and if anyone can get through it with flying colors, it's probably her.
Now, obviously, again, I referenced the White House here. That would throw her off of that kind of situation. We're already talking about probably Ilia Topuria is not fighting the first half of the year, as far as what he's indicated publicly as well. There have been some grand plans about putting as many title fights on here as possible. I know you were even speaking about the reality that you could see 6 or 7 undisputed title fights on that card. How much do you think that this, and obviously Topuria's situation as well, kind of throws off that possibility?
So President Trump initially talked about 8 or 9 title fights potentially at the White House, and I have been probed repeatedly about this, and I'm glad you got my comments sort of right, because if you are trying to distance this fight card from UFC 300, which was robust, and if you're trying to distance this fight card from other major players like UFC 217, 3 undisputed title fights, how do you do it? With 5 undisputed title fights on the main card. Now, if they all go the distance, maybe aesthetically that leaves some things to be desired. But part of the reason why I feel like you're going to get a crazy amount of undisputed title fights is that I look at the calendar and I see come February 1st, all those title fights will have cleared. You have 0 undisputed title fights in the month of March, right? Because it's a BMF title fight. And then you got a couple more pay-per-views before June 14th. So in theory, a lot of these champions and challengers are going to be ready. And if you are trying to blow it the F out on this once-in-a-lifetime card, I feel like the way to do that is to have more than 3 title fights, and that's my expectation.
Okay. Now, obviously, I want to get back to 324 as well.
Yeah.
There is still a championship fight on the docket. It is an interim title fight. We have Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje. They're going at it here. This is actually kind of like a big step up for Paddy Pimblett, who's not faced anybody who's in the current top 10 among the candidates. Obviously, Gaethje, a former interim title holder himself. But where do you kind of see the way this shapes out for Paddy Pimblett, kind of stepping up and getting a bigger opportunity against someone who's really still in the thick of it?
Well, he's earned it. I mean, say what you want about the performance against Jared Gordon, but 2 of the 3 judges saw it his way. He's 7-0 in the UFC, and the betting line is but one lens through which to look at this thing, but he's about a 2.5 to 1 favorite over the credentialed Justin Gaethje, so that tells you something. I've talked a lot about Paddy Pimblett's desire to come to the UFC when he was a proper athlete. Could have come at 21 years old, could have come at 23, but he wanted to come and not just take part, but really contend, and that's the way it has played out. I think he has more ways to win the fight. But Justin Gaethje is a disciplined athlete and at the height of motivation, and I really do believe that when it comes to Gaethje, that 37 years old age is just a number. And even if I think that, Gaethje is either in the twilight or on the backside of his career, I still think that he can be the best lightweight in the world, and he can spring the upset come January 24th. But Paddy deserves the distinction as the betting favorite, even if some people don't suggest in a straight meritocracy that he deserved the title fight.
What is it about this fight, maybe as far as how you see it kind of playing out, that really gets your blood pumping?
Well, Paddy Pimblett has talked about being an MMA striker, and a well-versed MMA striker with all limbs and kicking to all levels. And he has talked about Justin Gaethje maybe being a more limited striker, right? A boxer with some leg kicks, right? So I'm fascinated to see the extent to which Paddy Pimblett is able to open up on the feet, or is he just going to potentially try to enforce some grappling situations? I think it's a fascinating matchup. I know you have an expert eye on this stuff, and I hate to say there's bulletproof matchmaking or a fight that can't be boring, but I just don't know how this fight isn't chaotic from the moment they touch gloves.
There's obviously the specter of two men that are kind of hovering over this fight. There's the champion Ilia Topuria, the reason why we have this interim title fight, and there's the other guy, the other elephant in the room, Arman Tsarukyan, who is obviously waiting for his chance that he's hoping he's earned. Obviously, there's been all of the behind-the-scenes stuff, and which may or may not know exactly whose story to believe and that kind of thing. You've spoken a little bit about that in other places. But as far as this fight, I mean, is it a little disappointing that we're just in the muddy waters here, that we cannot focus specifically on entirely Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje because of everything else that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you set it up beautifully. When Justin Gaethje beat Tony Ferguson in 2020 to win the interim lightweight championship, he tossed the belt on the ground. And a lot of fans were put off by that decision. And I talked to Justin recently, and he acknowledged the value of the interim belt. And he's not going to do that this time around. But his decision was rooted in the fact that Khabib Nurmagomedov was the guy that he had to face and was the undisputed champion. So it felt like if I don't beat that guy, I'm not really the champion. But when you're fighting for an interim belt, it's because the champ can't go. And we don't know when Topuria is going to be able to go. And Arman Tsarukyan got his title shot at UFC 311. I hate to say it, but he couldn't make the walk. Now, you mentioned the behind-the-scenes stuff. We don't know if he couldn't make the walk because of a weight cut-related back injury or if it was just a back injury. Depending on which executive you want to believe, therein lies the truth, I guess. But I think as far as Dana's concerned, he got his shot. There was the wayward headbutt of Dan Hooker, which certainly didn't help his candidacy. And both of these guys have a case to get this opportunity. I really don't have much patience left for those who suggest Paddy isn't worthy. And even guys like Dustin Poirier suggest that he's not worthy. And when you look at the rankings and you look at what he's done, and yes, look at the betting line, he deserves it. And if he beats Justin Gaethje, I think that'll mute a lot of the naysayers for sure.
One would think so. I mean, that's a legitimate win. Not that any of his wins were illegitimate, but now we're talking about someone that's like, okay, this is one of the top guys, right? Who realistically, he wouldn't have been a bad option to fight Ilia Topuria for a championship. So that makes a lot of sense. I want to talk about the co-main event as well. Now that we've got a new co-main event elevated up, one that actually is pretty attractive, obviously, with Sean O'Malley himself, on that star level in the UFC. He's fighting against Song Yadong. As far as this fight goes, obviously, a lot of the focus is on O'Malley here. He is that star caliber guy. But he's also talking about not only looking to get that championship, get it off of Peter Yan, he's focused on Song Yadong as well, but he's talking about maybe ending his career after this year. I mean, what's your read on this whole thing?
So I don't know the extent to which he has realized financial freedom, but certainly you got to think Sean O'Malley's net worth is in a pretty good place right now. But I don't think he has an appetite for sticking around if he can't be the best in the world consistently. And my podcast partner, Kenny Florian, probably retired a little bit too early, and maybe that was because of his back injury. But once he lost to Jose Aldo and he didn't see a direct championship trajectory, he retired. And his last fight was for a world championship. And I think for Sean O'Malley, if he's staring at 3 straight losses, and the third of which would be to Song Yadong, and you can argue stylistically they gave him the most favorable matchup in that top 10. You know, a lot of masses would like to see him fight Umar Nurmagomedov or Corey Sandhagen, right? So if he doesn't beat Song Yadong, then I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe do something else. But I guess what I can't tell you is just how much he loves this, right? There are certain athletes that just absolutely love this, right? Bo Nickel, for example, just absolutely loves training and fighting. And I know there's a lot of noise surrounding Bo, but this is just what he wants to devote his life to. And I just don't know where Sean is at mentally. Physically, I think he's great. And if he can manage distance and set some traps and knock out Song Yadong, you know, this will not be a conversation we're happening in 10 days.
You mentioned this guy who's also fighting on this card, Umar Nurmagomedov. He is fighting down the card. It's a very stacked card, obviously.
Yeah.
If we're talking about him, he's like the 7th bout in the order or 8th or something like that. Something crazy. Going against Davison Figueiredo. That's a key fight in the picture as well. There's also the prospect of a trilogy fight between the champion Petr Yan and Merab Dvalishvili.
Yeah.
We've got a lot going on at bantamweight here. I mean, is this the most fascinating title picture? Obviously, we had that muddy one at 155. Is this the one that's kind of the most exciting because of there's not really negatives going on?
Right. Yeah, I would say right behind welterweight, it's bantamweight for me. I think you have to do Petr Yan and Merab Dvalishvili a third time, and best of luck to the Georgian trying to close that gap, because what Petr Yan did at the end of that title reign for Merab was absolutely otherworldly. But yeah, I mean, I do think Sean O'Malley, as the consensus biggest superstar in this division, is going to be afforded opportunities that maybe other guys are not. If he beats Song Yadong, perhaps they would try to elevate him. But I still think that the UFC has come out and said that they want to do Yan Dvalishvili, and I understand that. But yeah, 35's in a great place. And Davison Figueiredo has struggled a little bit since moving up to 125 pounds. I'd like to see him take more chances. But I've said Umar Nurmagomedov is one of the top 10 pound-for-pound fighters in the world. And I think on any given Saturday night, he's an amazing matchup for Merab again or Petr Yan. And we'll see what he can do. He's a minus 1350 betting favorite against Davison next week.
That sounds crazy. I mean, the odds makers maybe sometimes know a little bit more than the likes of you or even I, right? But let's look ahead to 325 as well. Australia, it's back-to-back cards too, by the way. This is not really a common thing. I think we go back like 5 years ago when we had numbered events back-to-back. Does that have any sort of challenges to it, doing a larger scale, more prominent show back-to-back? It's not like you guys aren't used to doing them back-to-back-to-back, but these are two big shows.
Yeah, it just condenses the preparation. And maybe unlike some of the fight nights, there's a lot more work to be done on the front end when it comes to pre-voiced elements and things like that. I don't know exactly what I'm walking into at 324 in terms of Paramount Plus. I mean, I can tell you that I prefer to do everything live that I possibly can and not put things on tape. But all of our billboards and things like that are all laid to tape. So in theory, I'm doing a lot of UFC 325 voiceovers on Thursday and Friday before UFC 324, which is less than ideal. So that's sort of the compression for me. And then I guess the biggest challenge for me in a back-to-back situation, and I know you can speak to this in your world, trying to cover all these athletes in back-to-back weeks, but when I get on a plane to Sydney, I won't have prepped any of the 28 fighters that are competing. When I get on the plane to Vegas for 324, I might have prepped 12 of the 28 athletes already. But I can't turn the page to 325 until 324 is done. So my preparation will be condensed and just try to knock down the cone in front of me and devote as many hours in the day that I'm afforded as humanly possible. But yeah, it's going to be a grind, but we're excited to blow it out. I think this is a nice way to begin the new partnership with two back-to-back numbered events.
325 is obviously headlined by Alexander Volkanovski. He's defending his belt, first time of his second reign in a rematch, immediate rematch for him, not an immediate rematch for Diego Lopez. But specific to Volkanovski, because you've been boots on the ground down under, I have not. I'm curious, is he the biggest, most beloved star Australia has in MMA?
Yes, and he said to me, if I wasn't 5'6", I wouldn't be able to go anywhere in this country, you know. But it's interesting when you think about some of the professional athletes with size, and you're 6'3". If Volk was 6'1", he couldn't go anywhere in that country. But he's 5'6", you know, his wife's 5'11", put on a little hat, you're good. He is a massive superstar. What I didn't realize was just how big his resonance was in the U.S. I mean, he is a bona fide American superstar, and you know, the Cookin' with Volk Instagram channel I think has more followers than actually most fighters. But it's easy to see why he's beloved, you know, just the way he carries himself as father, as human being, as fighter. It's easy to see why in a nation that appreciates MMA to such an extent why he's leading the charge.
I know from the last time you and I spoke how much you put value in title defenses.
Yeah.
He's got 5 of them. He's going for his, technically it's 6th across two reigns, right? We're talking about 3 guys who've put together very impressive runs at 145 pounds. It's Volkanovski, it's Jose Aldo, it's Max Holloway. I'm going to put you on the spot. Rank their body of work at 145.
It's really hard because Max Holloway often takes a back seat, if not a third seat in this conversation. And I think people lose sight of the Holloway reign in this conversation. A lot of historians point to Jose Aldo, the title defenses, the WEC stuff. Aldo's otherworldly, but for me, Volkanovski, courtesy of the 4 wins against those guys, the 1 against Aldo, the 3 against Max Holloway, all of this being done in the modernest of modern eras, I think I have to give Volkanovski the nod. And when you also add to his legacy, one of the hardest things to do is to lose the belt and then regain it. He's done that as well. It's hard to sort of put the King of Rio second to anybody, but for me, it's the former Warilla Gorilla Rugby League standout, Alexander Volkanovski, greatest featherweight I've seen.
Now, obviously, this was a little bit of a surprise booking for some people because there was the thought that, hey, maybe Lerone Murphy had got it done. There's, of course, the whole Movsar Evloev. He's having trouble getting into the cage. That's part of the issue there. But we're talking about 2 guys who are on very impressive runs, still waiting their turn. Were you surprised by kind of the timing of this rematch relative to maybe going to one of those other guys?
I was shocked. We had 2 #1 contenders in Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy. I guess what I would prefer would be to see the UFC come out and say, hey, folks, I understand straight meritocracy. Maybe you have an issue with this, but Diego Lopez stepped up for us and fought Danny Ige on 2 hours' notice, right, which I thought was a terrible decision by Diego Lopez to take that fight. Stepped up for them there. Stepped up against Canelo versus Crawford, headline Noche against John Lord Silva, and then did that. So I guess when you make a decision that by and large the fan base disagrees with, I would just like to see them come out and express their rationale for doing so. You don't have to say our internal metrics suggest that Diego Lopez can be a massive star, not just in Brazil and Mexico, but beyond. But look at what Diego Lopez has done. Lean into that, because I think we all know straight meritocracy. It's Movsar Evloev or Lerone Murphy. It's not Diego Lopez.
And obviously, that kind of feeds into something I wanted to ask you about. There's the rankings that we have, right? Evloev, I believe, is the #1 ranked contender there. Murphy's actually a little bit lower. I don't know what the methodology there, but I know that there are, the rankings panel is made up of some, let's say, lesser known, maybe less prestigious media bodies, right? Media voters and that kind of thing. What are your thoughts when you look at these rankings and the way they're compiled? Do you have a way you'd rather see it done?
It's just an aesthetic. It's, I think, important for us to have rankings, but as you well know, Scott, more often than not, the #1 contender is not fighting for the world championship. I think you just have to explain to fans what's going on with the matchmaking. And as far as who is, I remember when I covered Major League Baseball, some of these journalists, let their egos into the voting process and leave a guy like Pedro Martinez off the ballot, and he loses the MVP to Pudge Rodriguez. And, I think there's always going to be ego in voting. And sometimes I look at a guy make a quantum leap and I see another guy removed from the rankings, and I don't exactly understand how that all happens. But I think it's kind of an inconvenient truth. And even if the #7 ranked guy in the world's getting the title fight, there's just got to be an explanation behind it.
You referenced it before. I want to go back to something you said. You said you're preparing for 28 guys, men and women, I believe, on that card for Australia.
Right.
That's a lot of fights.
Yeah.
I mean, we're used to, when I say used to, there used to be a time where 11 to 12 was pretty much the norm, right? Pay-per-view card, you had 11 to 12 fights. Kind of you could carve your evening out in a little different way. Now it's like if you want to watch all those, your whole day is devoted to that. How do you feel about it? Do you think more is more, or is maybe less more in terms of the number of bouts?
I think less is more. I think it's absolutely obnoxious. I'm on the record, right? I don't think this is going to result in me losing my job, but 15 fights over 8 hours times 41 Saturday nights a year is asking a lot of fans who don't want to miss anything. So, yes, I think the wheelhouse is 10 or 11 fights. And during the global pandemic, we went to 15. And if I was bigger, I would have fought Mick Maynard at the time.
We're got a new start time as well. We're going back down to 9 o'clock. You're obviously excited, I can tell, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of us who have children or are on the East Coast and we wake up at 5:30 or 6 a.m., it's hard to stay up for 20 hours, even though for me, I'm working these events. But yeah, I mean, my family has been celebrating that change, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And I certainly think for fans in Europe as well, they're going to feel that hour. And these fans have devoted so much of themselves to following this sport across time zones and networks and everything else. And yeah, anytime I think we can make it a little bit easier for people in terms of the time zone, power to us, and we did it.
Do you have any kind of insight into why it took so long to get to this point? Obviously, there's a new broadcast partner, so that must have been at least influencing why this happened. But why was there so much resistance? Because you remember there was a time where they did try out that 9 o'clock start, did it for like about 8 months or so, and then went back to 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, pacing is still key, right? And I think sometimes I would harken back to a time where Lyoto Machida fought CB Dalloway in Brazil, and Lyoto's walking at 3:45 a.m. local time, and half the fans behind us are asleep in a non-air conditioned venue, and I'm thinking, what exactly are we doing here? But I don't know if it's network preference or now that we're not on pay-per-view, which always had a 10 p.m. Eastern start time, did they feel like they could make the pivot? So I don't exactly know the rationale, but I know my twin brother ain't going to be falling asleep during Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman anymore. So
there you go. Now I want to talk to you too, just harken back to kind of the beginning of your career, right, with the UFC in particular. 14 years. This is your 15th year, but 14 years ago was your first event. I was in Nashville for that one as well, covering Jim Miller. He was local for us and for the paper I was working at the time. When you must encounter some of those old fights you called. When you hear yourself, how much is it easy to listen to yourself because of, maybe you've grown or evolved as a broadcaster? Like, how do you see yourself kind of having changed?
One of the hardest things to do as a broadcaster is to listen back to yourself, and I know you can speak to this, right? I think in the near 600 episodes of the Anik and Florian podcast we've done that Kenny Florian hasn't listened back to a lot of it. I don't want to listen back to it either, right? But if I'm going to get better, I sort of have to do some of that. So yeah, I think for a lot of us, when we hear ourselves early on in our career, we cringe a little bit. I definitely hear a higher voice. I mean, my voice has certainly been damaged to whatever degree, I don't know, but I have a monozygotic identical twin, and his voice is higher than mine. So I definitely hear a higher pitch. But I'm confident in the work that I trotted out there in Bellator in 2009 and my first few UFC shows. Certainly, there's been an evolution, and I'm judging myself every show. The preparation is constantly evolving. One of my initiatives over the last few years has been trying to learn how to effectively pause without using verbal crutches, but there's always room for improvement. Never had a perfect show, never will. But yeah, when I listen and look back to some of those early telecasts, it's in part you feel good because I wasn't that bad, but in another part it's like, oh my gosh, thank God I'm getting better as opposed to getting worse.
I want to head to the end here, but I want to gaze into the 2026 crystal ball, if you will. You can be rapid fire, you could expand, whatever you want to do. So here we go. Will Conor McGregor step into the octagon?
Yes, he will fight June 14th at the White House.
Will Alex Pereira fight for the heavyweight title?
No.
Will Dana come around and let Jon Jones fight at the White House?
I don't think so, no.
Who's the man or woman most likely to win an undisputed title for the first time this year?
To win an undisputed title for the first time this year, got to be about opportunity. Perhaps it'd be one of the middleweights like an Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I was asked for a bold prediction, and I said that Peyton Talbot would be the bantamweight champion at the end of the year. So we'll stick with that.
That's an interesting one. I like that one. Name a fighter who will get that UFC Hall of Fame call.
Dominic Cruz or Demetrius Johnson.
Will you be on the call for a Gable Steveson fight?
In 2026. We can only dream. I mean, suggesting that guy's the future doesn't even begin to describe it. So I'll say yes. December 2026, Gable Steveson makes his UFC debut.
And the last one, who is the next emergent UFC star who we aren't already talking enough about?
So some people are talking about Baisangur Susarkayev. Would you suggest that we're already talking about Ateba Gauthier or not?
I think we can allow that to be in yeah, absolutely.
So These Cameroonian athletes who are forged by life experience during their formative years, they come to the octagon with a lot of advantages, not just in terms of grip strength from working in the fields, but just mental toughness. And Gaethje looks like he was cut out of stone and just aligned with Carl Prince at Manchester Top Team. A lot of us just don't see any way that that man is not wreaking havoc in the top 10, come the third quarter of this year. So it's hard not to land on a Teba Gaethje.
And there you go. Well, Jon, thank you very much for taking the time. Appreciate you coming here, and we'll have to do it again.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Now, we still have a lot more to talk about with regard to UFC 324, so I'm going to throw it back to you, Jake.
Thank you, Scott, who has magically appeared back home. It's not something you see every day. Also, let us know in the comments what you thought about that Jon Anik interview and the conversation that he had with Scott. But guys, like you mentioned, Scott, we got to talk about UFC 324 and the elephant in the room, as you phrased it. Kayla Harrison out for what it seems like 6 months is the kind of number that we're hearing. So that fight with Amanda Nunes has been postponed.
Something like 6 to 9. It seems to be what you expect. Yeah.
Yeah. So White House is something that you mentioned, and I'll throw this over to Erich because Scott's been getting a lot of love for the camera for the past 30 minutes. But Erich, do you think that the White House rescheduling is off the table? I'll preface this by saying, Dana White, he's talked about John Jones on the White House card being something that he can't really count on. So they want fights that they could probably nail down for that card. Do you think that it's off there?
Everyone, if you saw Kayla Harrison's message on social media earlier today, she's gutted, right? She's sitting on a hospital bed. Her family's in Florida. She's in New York City getting neck surgery. If I were look, it doesn't sound particularly promising that she'll be on the White House card. It's a whole nother discussion what they end up doing with the card now, with just seemingly so many fights that are big fights potentially coming off of the board. Regardless, look, if I'm a betting guy, I would say probably not, unless you're giving me, really good odds on this happening.
You're not a betting guy, though.
Yeah, I am a betting guy, as we know. But, yeah, I don't know exactly. It doesn't. What percentage do I say that she's on the White House card? Maybe like 10%, just because she's an amazing athlete and an amazing competitor. I would say don't bet against Kayla Harrison because she's that person, but doesn't sound particularly likely to me.
Yeah, I'm curious your Scott's thought because obviously you're talking to Jon and he's the interviewee and now you've got a bit of a chance to give more of your own thoughts. What do you think about Kayla's chances on being on that card?
Unfortunately for her, and it meant a lot to her, I think White House is a pipe dream. It just doesn't seem realistic. I mean, 6 months sounds like, again, the almost best case scenario. So are we hitting June 14th that way? Doesn't sound like it. I can't imagine so, especially with the amount of weight she's gonna have to cut to do that, to get home that quickly. Nothing adds up for it. I think that's an unfortunate loss for her, and probably for the White House too. Again, she is the lone only American national identifier champion, right? Mackenzie Dern, she's American and Brazilian. This is our only American undisputed champion. She's not going to be a part of it. I can't imagine, and that's unfortunate. If I'm wrong, hey, I'd be happier than anybody, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, the news, it just all around is really just devastating. I mean, obviously, mostly for Kayla and her health, and then of course there's a whole trickle down effect of things that it affects. But I do want to ask you, Scott, how do you think that this affects the appeal of UFC 324, which she was supposed to be the co-main event of alongside Amanda Nunes? Do you think that this card is still interesting? How do you find it?
Look, it's a big hit. There's no way to dance around that. Losing this fight is a big hit. It was the most massive fight on the card and really one of the biggest fights that we've had in the last few years. Even Jon Anik was basically like, you know what, even in amongst the big fights that we had this year, this really was, a cream of the crop type level, right? You don't replace it. I don't think you can replace it. I'm actually glad they're not seemingly going to go put together something that's not necessary, like some sort of interim bantamweight title fight. Looks like that's not going to happen, thankfully, because we don't need it. Could Amanda Nunes take another fight, as some people are speculating? Jon Anik even referenced it as well. Maybe. I doubt it. So, but having said all of that, I do think that there is a lot of depth on this card that really helps make up for the fact that it lost the biggest fight. There's still so many fights that are attractive, and it's also got the added appeal of it being the very first numbered event in the post pay-per-view in the United States era. I don't think it's going to chase anybody away.
Eric, what do you think?
Certainly don't think it's going to chase anybody away, but when when this card was announced, we were kind of dumbfounded. Like Justin Gaethje's versus Paddy Pimblett in an interim title fight is higher than Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes. That was our immediate reaction. So for me, we lost the best fight on the card. Where do you go to from there? Well, it's still a really solid card. Sean O'Malley goes to the main co-main event spot, which I have no issue with. Some of the decisions currently on the main card, these change very frequently. Could change even the days before leading up to the card. Umar Nurmagomedov versus Davison Figueiredo is currently listed for the prelims. Gotta bump that up to the main card, especially number 2 versus number 6 in that division. You go further down. Rose Namajunas versus Talia Silva is also a really fun fight in the women's division. Like Waldo's Cortez Acosta versus Derek Lewis is on it too. I don't know if you necessarily need that one on the main card, but they love heavyweights and finishes and all that stuff. It's a tough one. You can't replace it, but it's still. It's gonna get my eyeballs no matter what, and I would assume we get a lot of the casuals still as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you guys both said, and obviously what John mentioned in the interview too. This main event now with Justin Gaethje. I mean, it was the main event before, but now this is really what they're kind of selling it on. Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett. Like, there's no way that this could be a boring fight. I'd be shocked, and I'm sure you guys would be as well. Like, it really should be everything that fans would come to expect from those two. And then again, like you mentioned, the depth, Scott. I mean, we'll get to this next week on the score for it, the event rating, and I would imagine it's relatively high. So it gives. There's something for everyone, the big main event slot for the fans who want to see all out action, and then for the hardcores, the diehards, you've got just depth throughout this card. So luckily they packed this 324 first card on Paramount Plus as well as they could. So even when Devastation did hit, it seems like they're kind of okay, right?
I would think so. Yeah, I think they've been built to weather it here. The very nature of going all in and making it exciting and stacking it deep into the prelims, it really makes it so that look. Another thing to factor in here is, as much as all three of us were very excited about this fight and we respect the fighters here and we were excited about it, there are some staunch opponents of the idea of women's MMA. These people exist. If we're going to lose a big fight, that's probably the one that's going to do the least damage for, let's say, that demographic.
Yeah, fair enough. And I guess their opinions are their own. But let's talk about...
It is a free country.
Yes, it is. But let's talk about... You were just talking about the market and all that. Pay-per-view is gone, like you mentioned beforehand. And Eric, like you said about the co-main event now being Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong, because they aren't charging $80 anymore for a pay-per-view, right? Do you think that it could have used a new enticing spicy co-main event, or are they going to do just fine now that it doesn't really make a difference to fans' pockets either way?
Well, it doesn't make a difference to the UFC's pockets really much either. You still have Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje, and pay-per-view still exists in Europe. So a lot of people might not realize that. Pay-per-view is still going to exist in England, and Paddy Pimblett's a massive star over there. So your pay-per-view draw, your golden goose, so to say, in this fight is Paddy Pimblett from a financial perspective. Now, we have seen in the past the UFC has been willing to unload a truck for fighters stepping in on short notice to save a card for the main event. We saw this, famously, even Alex Pereira was, injured, had a toe injury, seemingly didn't really want to fight on 2 weeks' notice, but Conor McGregor pulls out. Alex Pereira gets a nice sum of money. I'm not so sure that there's going to be a ton of just a ton of urgency, from the UFC to to do that going forward. So I'm interested to see. Like, it didn't really sound like they're too interested in a co-main event. It was just like, all right, let's move everybody else up and went on with the show. I'm interested to see in the future if they're willing to kind of really put that extra foot forward for a main event spot or just short notice replacement.
I'm curious, Scott. What are your thoughts on how that whole thing might move going forward?
What whole thing are we saying here? The idea of co-main events being replaced, or
yeah, the UFC unloading the truck. Do you think we're gonna still see that, or what do you think?
I'm dubious of that. I don't know that they need to do that. If they really want to, maybe for like a mega event or something like that. If they're very interested in keeping that, I mean, sure, maybe they have the finances to do it if they really want to. They're making $1.1 billion this year, no matter what fights they put on, as long as they put them on. So the money's probably there. Is the motivation there because they don't need to do that to get you to buy the pay-per-view anymore, and maybe sort of extra on top of what they were going to make on flat fees when it was over on ESPN? It doesn't seem like it. Maybe there are some sort of incentives if that they can hit, and maybe I don't know. I don't know if there's anything along the way that's worth it for them. My gut says it's not necessary to, break the bank in order to make something like that happen. I'm sure they're not going to go forward with let's say a numbered event that's anchored by, a 3-round fight between Sean O'Malley and Song Yadong. I don't envision that happening. So that's kind of the full stop part I would get to, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be, like I said, backing up the Brinks truck, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's like kind of like a double-edged sword with the disappearing of pay-per-view. It's like on one hand, like, we're $80 richer or less poor than we would have been otherwise. However,
each month,
yes, throughout the year, can't do math right now. It's a high number, right? But at the same point, if things do fall through, there is less of an incentive for those things to get fixed for the UFC. And I mean, there's, like you guys kind of mentioned, there's not too much of a reason for them to do it. So I don't know. It's something that we're going to have to definitely see how it plays out over the course of the year. And that was something that I was very curious about when I heard that pay-per-view is going to be gone in the U.S. market, which is obviously a pretty big one. And like you mentioned, Eric, pay-per-view does still exist elsewhere. So how do those fans react, when something big falls out on a main card on where they are paying pay-per-view and it, the UFC just doesn't see... They do the calculus and it doesn't make sense for it to add up for the European fans or whoever else. It's interesting. I find it fascinating.
And I would just add too, like the short notice replacement thing has a big history in UFC and MMA. Some of their biggest events actually happened with short notice replacements. Jorge Masvidal stepped in against Gilbert Burns on Fight Island, UFC 251. Chad Mendez stepped in for Jose Aldo against Conor McGregor. Nate Diaz stepped in for Rafael dos Anjos. Those are big, and famously the negotiations are more money. It's it might be gone. That those events, those short notice replacements, they do get buzz, and that might be a thing of the past. I don't know.
Definitely have to see how it plays out. But let's talk about another trend that has been getting some attention recently. I'll cite Laura Sanko because she's a big example of this. She was on Mike Bond's podcast, MMA Junkie, The Bonfire it is called. And in terms of one of the trends that she saw for 2026 is, the UFC moving further and further towards violence, less, for lack of a better way, and paraphrasing here, but, the fighters that wrestle to decisions, for instance, try and get those big viral finishes that, kind of won some fans over in the early years. And I want to ask you guys, and another example of this is the cutting of Rinat Fakhretdinov. That was something that caused quite a bit of stir. But Scott, I'll ask you: he
wasn't really cut? He was more just kind of
let go,
to walk away, right?
His contract had expired; they didn't renew it. If that's the proper way to phrase it, correct?
Yeah, that's probably more accurate. Yeah.
Okay, I'll double check. I'll make sure to put something on the screen. But Scott, I'll ask you: do you think that the UFC is moving further away from sport towards entertainment?
I would think so. It certainly looks that way. It's not like this is not new. It's really been in the works for probably even well over 10 years now, really. Once they got to the point where they consolidated everybody in the post Strikeforce world, very, very, very slowly they found that they just don't need to hold on to everybody if they're a top guy. There's always been a little bit of an element of that. We're seeing it more and more. We're starting to hear more and more about it, which seems more than just the smoke. It's almost like the sparks are lighting, and we're seeing the fire ignite, where they are, yes, probably going to start moving away from some of these fighters whose styles are maybe not aesthetically pleasing, whose personalities are not all that resonant, especially over here in the United States. There are certain personalities that we find fascinating who come out of, places like Russia, and Eastern Asia and that kind of, or Western Asia, excuse me. Those nations that have obviously, the Khabibs of the world, who was obviously, Khabib is fascinating. He's entertaining. He's interesting for many, many reasons. Not everybody resonates in the same way. It just seems like we're starting to head that direction, and I don't like it. I really do not. I'm much more here for the sport. Not that I don't want to be entertained, but I love this as sport. I love it as the chess match that we have between two fighters whose styles may, conflict and contrast. It's less about jiu-jitsu versus karate or whatever anymore. We have MMA style more or less, save for here and there, right? But I would rather, if they're going to move the UFC in the direction of entertainment being the more prominent thing here at the expense of sport, do it in the same way that other sports do. Tweak the rules, push things in a direction where, hey, we're trying to make it so you are rewarded for fighting in a certain way and detracted for fighting in another way. They changed how you can hit the quarterback in the NFL. They change how you can cover receivers. They change all of these things, and a lot of it leads to more entertaining product, right? It's a different NFL than, your parents watched when they were kids, especially. So I would like to see the UFC, and obviously the UFC is just an organization, but they certainly have a lot of influence pretty much anywhere in this sport, work with the MMA governing bodies, the ABC, and try to get some legislation passed that even more focuses rules, changing it to bring out that entertainment product. Then they don't need to get rid of the talented fighters. The talented fighters, if they're good enough, they'll adjust, and then we can keep both.
I find that very, very interesting, and I excuse me if you don't have like an answer off the top of your head, because it's a very complicated topic, but that is a very interesting point. Is there anything that you've seen people point to for things that could be changed in terms of the rules to do that? Because when I have two reactions when I hear that. I'm like, yes, I could totally see that working, but on the other end, if I'm thinking about like extremes that would detract people from being on the ground and stuff like that, it almost feels like it would take away the MMA of MMA. So I'm just curious if you have any specific examples, and if not, no worries, obviously.
I don't know that I have anything truly concrete or revolutionary or sport changing for you or anything like that, but I will say this. I would be against anything that would just, take away the ground game. We don't want that. But I think there are ways that you can especially tweak the scoring that rewards even further the emphasis on trying to get to the finish, racking up more damage. One thing I've wanted for a long time is for them to actually stretch out the definitions of what a 10-9, 10-8, and 10-7 are. Make it so that a 10-7 is really closer to what we have as a 10-8. And then a 10-8 could be more like, hey, that's like a good solid round where someone did real damage there. So that way you don't have those rounds where it's like, man, they threw 7 strikes. Each fighter threw at least 3. One of them threw 4. It was a little bit more, emphatic. We'll give them that round. And then giving the same score to somebody who landed like 60 strikes to, 51, but hey, they might have had them rocked a little bit, but it wasn't like so far to the point where you'd be given a 10-8 in the current system. I want middle grounds to be there that allow for the judges to give more disparate scores, so that you actually get fighters who, if they are trying to finish that fight in that last round and not much was done to them in those first 2 rounds, man, they can do it. I want to see that.
That's a good point. I think I've heard you say this before, like the difference between a 10-9 and a 10-8 is freaking ginormous, and it's like it's too easy to just get if you know you can get 10-9s to just grind out a win, right?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to see them change that a little bit more, right? What do you think, Eric?
So from my perspective, I agree that like the 10 difference between 10-8 10-9 should be like more clear. So for me, like there's a couple different ways that you can do it. Since nobody knows the judge's scoring, you can make it like kind of implicit. So whether it's like a knockdown, you automatically get a point. So like, or the other person lose a point. So like, if you get a knockdown, someone would have to do something crazy in order to make it like you're going to lose a point. So it'd be 10-8 if you get a knockdown. Or if there's a penalty, like if there's a poke to the eye, it's immediate point deduction. Like no more, and like that would increase the urgency of the person who committed the penalty. We saw this, and we've talked about this fight, Kyle Prepelic versus Drew Dober. That happened where it was point deduction and then immediate. Drew Dober knows for sure he lost the decision. He needs a finish right now. And I feel like whether you show the judges scorecards or not, it would just it'd become more implicit. So for me, that's an immediate rule change that you can make. To answer the like original question, UFC it pretty clearly wants like a 50% finish rate or higher. 2022 they had in 2021 they had a 48.1% finish rate. Obviously, it increased from there. 53.2% in 2022, 50.3% in 2023, and then 2024 they changed the gloves. You guys might remember that.
Yes.
They changed the gloves, and for
Briefly.
betting yes, for a very brief amount of time, finish rates dropped precipitously. 43.7% finish rate per fight matrix in 2024, and those gloves were there for several months. Hard not to get the correlation there. And then in 2025, it rebounded 50.2%. So I think they're pretty steadfast. They want a 50% or higher finish rate.
The one thing I would add too, and this is something I think the UFC could certainly do if they really wanted to. Like if you want to have champions that are exciting and they're not like grind them out kind of guys, then frankly you can put stipulations in there that, hey, if you want to fight for one of our titles, like you've got to be knocking somebody out, right? You've got to submit somebody. We want to see finish. You got to get a fight of the night or two along the way, or a performance of the night or something like that. If they can add something in there that fighters can shoot for, that is kind of a mark of their excitement level and what they can bring value wise as an entertainment product. If they want to do that with their proprietary titles, they are welcome to do that. These are not world titles, they're promotion titles, right? Every title is its own prize, is the way it really truly works. Since it's not a sanctioning body, right? So yeah, and they can do it how they want to. But if they wanted to do that, I think that's another way that they could certainly ensure that, hey, these fighters, like, if you want to be the best in the world, we're looking for you to at least stop people too, or like really jazz up the place so that there is a little bit more of a, hey, you're not just getting by with like squeaker wins that maybe aren't interesting. Now you can do it in a way that is going to represent us as a company and an exciting product as well. And that's not scripted, it's just incentivization. I could probably live in that world.
One thing that I was going to bring up later in the final round when we, talk about Pride Final Conflict 2005, but I'm going to bring it up now just because it's very topical. Correct me if I'm wrong, the yellow cards in Pride, one of the reasons to get one is stalling, right? And you get a deduction of your purse, or am I mistaken on that?
Yeah. If you're stalling, there is a deduction in the purse. The yellow card gets you that. Yep.
I feel like that's something that the UFC would have zero problem doing. Obviously, it's the Athletic Commission and the governing.
You get to save a little bit of money too.
Yeah. There you go. There would have to be some stuff. Yeah.
One thing to bring up: can I interest anybody here in knees to grounded opponents, knees to the head to grounded opponents? Anybody interested? It helps wrestlers. So a staller, like a wrestler, somebody sprawls, you could get a knee to the grounded opponent. That can help them get finishes. Just a thought.
Knee to the head, I'm cool
Pride
with.
rules is fine with me. Pride rules with elbows. That's what I want. Pride rules with elbows.
Yes.
Knee to the head, I'm cool with. Soccer kicks, I have a weird thing with that. I feel like it could do too much damage in one single blow, but I'm
okay, Doc. I'll take it. It's fine with me.
Fair enough. Knees to the head, I could. That's a good one.
Like we said, are we moving towards sport or entertainment? A little entertainment aspect there, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a good shout. I think we solved MMA, guys.
Yeah, I think we might have.
I routinely do this. This is just what I do.
Alrighty, well, that is some of the bigger news items of the week. And Scott, I'm going to throw it over to you for the quick hits in MMA news.
Well, for starters, guys, there's unfortunate news if you're looking for some fight announcements because Dana White, in a recent interview with Complex, has shut down the idea that Conor McGregor is going to be fighting at the White House against Michael Chandler. Seems to have moved on from the idea of that fight altogether. Remains to be seen what would become of Conor. Will he fight at some point or not, whether it's on the White House card or not, who knows? We did have a Dana White announcement earlier this week on Eric's favorite platform, IG Live. It was Israel Adesanya.
Both of those quick hits are not what Eric wanted to hear.
No, I didn't.
Sorry,
like
dude.
any
It
of
is what it is.
you.
It
All
is what
these
it
are
is. Israel Adesanya is going to headline the Seattle Fight Night card on March 28th. He's facing Joe Pyfer. And again, that was announced by Dana. So that one is officially official. We also have a co-main event that was announced for UFC 326. Kyle Bahayo against Reinier de Ritter. Essentially, this is the consolation bracket of that pseudo middleweight tournament that we were talking about last year. Obviously, the UFC didn't promote it as such, but that's kind of what we saw, right? So this is that branch of it too. Somebody's going to get the toilet bowl prize in the in terms of fantasy football if you guys play. One fight that we also will have announced coming up for 327 is Paulo Costa moving up to 205 pounds. He's going to be facing Azamat Murzakanov. And then bad news for actually the other pay-per-view this month, not pay-per-view, numbered event. Is numbered event, says Jon Anik. That's what we're going with. 325 has lost Jimmy Crute, who would be fighting in his own backyard, will not be. He ruptured his ACL, posted about it on his own Instagram, is out of his fight against Dustin Jacoby. So that's a bummer there. Outside of the UFC fight news, we do have something that's very relevant to you as a UFC viewer. Right before we enter that Paramount Plus era, we are looking at a price increase for subscriptions. Monthly prices are going up $1 each for both the essential and the premium levels. The year of essential, that level is going from $60 to $90, and the annual subscription to the premium plan goes up $20 to $140 for the year. That's the plan that I already had. I've had this for years, so I don't need to worry about that for a little while, but it's coming. Another change we have: the UFC Apex is no more. Call it the Meta Apex if you want. That is the sponsorship name for the next 5 years. I can't stop you from calling it the Warehouse. It is a free country, as we said before. Over to the PFL side, they have announced their Pittsburgh event is going to take place March 28th. Again, that is the same night as that UFC Seattle card headlined by Israel Adesanya. It's anchored, it's owned by other middleweight fights as well. Johnny Eblen against former UFC welterweight turned middleweight, couldn't make the weight, Brian Battle. That's going to be the main event. And Dalton Rasta against Impa Kasanganay in the co-main event. One more PFL bit before we are out of here. We are going with the departure of longtime president Ray Cefa. He is no longer with the organization, according to multiple reports. He was with the company dating back to when it was World Series of Fighting. So that's someone who's been around for the long way. No more, and that's it.
All right.
One thing I'll jump in. That's a real bummer about Jimmy Crute. He had, if you guys remember, he tore his ACL against Michael Olejniczak. What was that, 2020? And not good.
It was a few years back. I can't remember.
Yeah,
real shame.
But I know he was out for a long time with that injury. So I don't know if it's the same knee, but that's not good.
The Meta Apex thing, I'm still just so... When I saw that, I was actually kind of like bummed out because I was like, wow, that means that they're going to be using this thing like... Obviously, they use it for the TV shows and all that, but I was just like, I just knew that meant that they were going to be going back there, like they have to.
They're going to go back there. They're just not going to not go back there.
No, I know.
But
it was wishful thinking.
Look, we saw last year there were fewer shows at the Apex. You can still call it the Apex too. No matter what, it's not the UFC Apex now. It's the Meta Apex. You can just call it the Apex. That's fine. They had fewer shows there last year. if you want to be optimistic, maybe they'll have fewer there as well. Once again, continue to go on the road. I think the UFC does value going on the road. So hopefully they continue to do that. And maybe we're just talking about, a few times a year at the Apex. I think we can all live with some version of that too, if it is what it is. So.
Yes, yes. Well, let's talk about a exciting venue, and that is in Japan in 2005, Pride Final Conflict. And for you at home who did watch along with us, please let us know in the comments what you thought about this event. But for me, the first thing that sticks out was the main event, Mauricio Shogun, who I didn't realize he was 23 years old when he did this fight. It was crazy. He just came out like a bat out of hell. Yeah.
This was him jumping the line, I think, in a lot of ways. They alluded to it on the broadcast, right? Like this was kind of like he was following behind Vanderlei Silva, that Shoot to Box Academy there, and he got to the front of the line a lot faster than I think anybody had expected. But he did it so emphatically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was I can't remember exactly how long it was. 2:54 of round one. It was crazy. Like he just came out there and just got the job done, got his cash, and then brought
blast him. And he's going after for tornado kicks. It didn't land, but it was like, man, he's having fun out there.
Yeah, I was like, that's an interesting way to pass someone's guard.
Fedor Emelianenko walking down Mirko Cro Cop like that was wild. Absolutely wild.
Those first 10 minutes, right? The first 10 minutes were fantastic too.
Like a zombie. He's like, I'm coming right at you. He's like, if you hit me, I had to look up the betting odds for this because I was like, what were the odds for this? I remember Cro Cop was on a run here. Fedor Emelianenko was minus 210, and Cro Cop was plus 170. Right. So, yeah, couldn't find odds for.
Cro Cop got his licks in though, man. He busted up Fedor.
Made his nosebleed.
Yeah, his face was messed up afterwards. His eyes were blown out. It was pretty crazy.
Fedor is obviously a bigger guy. Like he's closer to what you'd call like a true heavyweight, whereas Mirko is, middle light heavyweight.
No, they were both really similar-ish in size. No. Cro Cop's more solid than you realize. They were both, if I recall, somewhere in the 230 range, somewhere in that. So Fedor, he's built like a bear, as opposed to he's built like some sort of like action figure.
Maybe that's what was messing with my head.
Fedor definitely not, but some of the the guys who are like 220, I look at them and I'm like, you would have fought at 185 in the current day. There's
a lot of fighters, especially the Japanese fighters, they would have fought way down. Like
you would have gotten killed
Sakuraba, he was fighting up in weight like at 205 and everything. Like realistically, he ended up eventually, I believe, fighting at welterweight later in his career. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but gosh, if he really wanted to, maybe he was a 55er. I don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting looking at all of, like the heights and weights. I'm like, oh my God, there's no way you could have fought at that division now. Like the science of MMA kind of really holds through with this card, where it's like all of the weight cutting and the dietitians that they have now totally change weight classes from year over like decade over decade.
Yeah. And then also one thing that stuck out to me in this fight was Alistair Overeem, seeing him just like so slimmed down. I mean, for me, I think of Ubereem and like, the days when, he's fighting in the UFC at heavyweight, and it was crazy just seeing him like so young, him holding up the hammer.
A couple years later, he was Ubereem. It didn't take that long. It was pretty quick too.
All that. It was also a cool fight. Like
that's all it was.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It was also a pretty cool fight. Like Overeem came out to play, and what ended up happened. TKO.
One more thought was Vanderlei Silva being stuck on bottom for the entire fight against Ricardo Arona. That one was interesting, and it made me miss the cage because he just got stuck there. He couldn't get up.
I had a question. So this is why I was saying I meant to bring this up later about the yellow cards. I can't remember which fight it was, but I remember that there were points in these fights, and I feel like this is the reason why we almost do the final round and like this like homework is to understand like how the sport worked. It's at least a big factor for me and why I enjoy it, to get these little tidbits of information about.
That's why I like to do it. I want to show you guys I want to take you along 100%. The journey of what you missed. Erich's got a lot more filled in than you do.
Yes, fill in some more of the gaps for myself and those at home. But I mentioned the yellow cards earlier, and it's easy enough for me to comprehend someone getting a yellow card who's like sitting on top, and the ref doesn't think that they're trying to finish the fight, right? But I believe,
Action!
yes,
Action!
I believe that there are instances where the guy on top and the guy on bottom would both get yellow cards, and I'm just curious as to why the person on bottom would also get one. Because like in my head, I'm like, well, that guy's he's in the inferior position. Like, would he penalize his purse for losing? Like, I don't know if there's much he could do about that. I don't know if maybe I read that.
I'm
wrong.
trying to remember an instance of that. I don't remember an instance of that. Did it happen in this card? Am I blanking or?
Oh, boy,
I don't think
remember.
it did. But I'll play a hypothetical for you, just without an example in mind. Let's say you're just holding on, you're trying to like wrap them up, lock in their arms and that kind of thing, so they can't do much. Maybe grapevine their legs and they can't really do anything locked down. It's not going to go anywhere. That's certainly a stall tactic.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. It doesn't just go on the person on top.
Think about ways that you've been stalled in jiu-jitsu, and that's pretty much what
I was just thinking about that. I was on top of a guy the other day, and I had my arm like locked in from side control, and I literally stopped, and I was like, if I was this competition, I'd never get up. Like, you can't get me off, and nobody would be able to get me off if I get my arm here. Like, I was like, I just never get up.
Yeah. Okay. So that definitely makes sense. I appreciate that, the clarification.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, in terms of the other ones, the Yoshida fight versus Tank Abbott, that was I don't want to call it like a freak show fight, but like it was an interesting one for
Tank
sure.
Abbott was a product of a different time. This was kind of near the end of it, and he was from kind of those almost that tough man type world, I guess, the UFC pre weight classes and all that stuff. He was a different type of fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, all around a like crazy experience. I mean, just
long. There was a lot of decisions, which I was surprised by.
On this one, there were more decisions than I'd remembered there being. But if you focus specifically on like the tournament bouts, which yes, there were some decisions in there as well, and obviously the Fedor fight went the distance as well. But that was an engaging fight, just because it went the distance. As you know, decision fights can also be fantastic as well. But yeah, some of the ones that weren't a part of the, let's say, the main attractions, maybe weren't the most fascinating. But how about young Fabricio Verdun?
Yep.
Oh yeah, and that was a
fighting
pretty
on
cool...
the undercard in his second Pride fight, fighting underneath Fedor, winning very impressive and one of his most famous fights against Mirko Cro Cop. 5 years later, it would be Fabricio Verdun who would end the perfect run, well, not perfect run, but the unbeaten streak of Fedor. So a little bit of synergy there.
Wow. There you go.
That's incredible.
Coming full circle. No, that was a really good one too. There was actually some really, really interesting grappling exchanges, if I'm remembering that correctly. Like just lots of flipping and flopping between the two guys, and they were talking
some
about...
of the stuff. Some of the stuff that you see just doesn't work anymore. Like I saw at least 2 omoplata sweeps. I'm like, man, that never would work in MMA now. Like that works.
Everybody is too sharp now. Yes,
like
absolutely.
Nobody's gonna turn.
The fighters are too well-rounded. They're too savvy. Those type of things don't work anymore, which is almost why it becomes more fun to watch some of those old fights, because you get to see some things that you don't see anymore, and I like that.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, well, let us know again in the comments what you thought of Pride Final Conflict. And yeah, if you have any questions, maybe we'll go ahead and get those in the comments and answer you. But Scott, I'm curious, for the next assignment, what do we have?
So you're not going to get, doesn't seem like we're going to Amanda Nunes fight anytime soon. So I'm going to give you an older one to watch, because I'm pretty sure Jake has not seen this before. Amanda Nunes against Valentina Shevchenko, their second fight, headlined UFC 215 all the way back in 2017. It was one of the lowest viewed pay-per-view cards that we have on record. It was not widely watched. I went to a bar or a restaurant to watch that one, I think. But especially when you're watching this, guys, I want you to watch it through a scoring lens. I want you to score each round and see who you think won.
Okay. I got it. I will
That'll be
do
fun.
my best.
I don't think I watched it. I was an MMA fan then, and I don't think I tuned in.
I'm nervous.
I can
feel
understand.
like.
It didn't get everybody's. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are not all that interested in women's MMA. I watched it. I was interested, and it's not like the greatest fight you've ever watched. It's not the worst fight you've ever watched. It's a close fight, and again, I really want to know who you guys think won. Because there's the whole thing about Amanda Nunes being larger. She's 35. She was the 45-pound champion as well. Valentina Shevchenko really more of a natural 25er. And I really do want to know what you think of that. The fact that the size dynamic is in there, and it was still a very close fight, no matter who you score for.
Alrighty, I'm nervous. Is there not necessarily like a correct answer on this one, or?
I mean, technically there is because somebody won.
No,
It was a split decision. It was a split decision. 2 out of 3 judges had it for Amanda Nunes. I'll spoil it for you. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all know that.
Yes.
And 1 judge had it for Valentina Shevchenko. And so we'll talk more about the scoring when we dive in next week.
Yeah, maybe too many questions would cause some spoilers. So
Too many questions.
or not spoilers, but
watch.
yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
watch
let's.
the fight.
Yes. Okay. We'll continue with our MMA history. Scott, what happened this week in MMA?
We're only going back 6 years ago, but that feels like a little bit of a while, right? It's pre-COVID, barely. January 18, 2020, Conor McGregor beats Donald Cowboy Cerrone in the UFC 246 headliner. Needed only 40 seconds to get that job done by TKO. Hit him with all these big elbow strikes right there. They were pretty nasty. But this also represents the most recent combat sports victory by the Notorious One. He has not won a fight in 6 years. You guys all want to watch him fight. He hadn't won in 6 years, guys.
14th.
What are you waiting for?
I'll see you June 14th.
Yeah.
I don't know if Dana's going to let you.
I'm going for it.
That
Alrighty.
fight I did actually watch live.
Yeah.
So
That.
I thought you were in on that one.
Yeah, I was in on that one, but this was before I was like fully in. It was like I was dipping my toe into the pool.
Still wading into the pool.
Exactly.
The 8-sided pool.
Yes. Yeah. There we go. And this is the last weekend that we're going into without a major event from the UFC or the PFL. But so for those who are looking to watch something else, Scott, what do you have for one more fight?
I got Octagon 82 lined up for you. That's Saturday, starts at noon. Fights are coming out of Dusseldorf, Germany. And you can watch it on internet pay-per-view if you go to octagon.tv. It's OKTAGON. This one is headlined by Karim Njizek, who, if you recall, he's the one who looks like a G.I. Joe that I predicted as my, I picked as my prospect, so to speak, in that show we did last year. He's really not a prospect, but he's been outside of the UFC for too long, and he's got to get there. I want to see how he does against Krzysztof Jotko in this one. They are both fighting for a €1 million prize in the final of this middleweight tournament that Octagon has been putting on both guys. They're top 50 middleweights. This is a really interesting, fascinating fight. Jotko, of course, I think a lot of you remember, had a long UFC run and a shorter one in PFL. So, frankly, it's not that I'm rooting against Jotko here, but I would be very curious to see if Njizek wins this, and if he wins it impressively. Would the UFC come calling before this guy? I think he's 34 years old. He's not 35 yet. Get him in there before he gets a little too old for when the UFC kind of likes to bring people in. I want to see how this guy does, and if he does well here, this is a test he's got to pass, right?
All right.
Absolutely. Jotko, former UFC. Trying to remember a fight that he had. I think he fought Gerald Mearshart at one point, but yeah.
He fought a bunch of guys. Yeah, he was there for a while.
Yeah. Oh, and Sean Strickland. He fought Sean Strickland.
Oh, wow.
When he was on his come up.
Interesting. Yeah. The more you know. Alrighty. Well, guys, that wraps up the final round and this episode of Against the Cage. Pleasure as always, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you both.
And thank you again to Jon Anik.
Yes. Big thank you to
Jon
Anik.
Anik.
And I will see you both and the rest of you at home next week.